This is too high def. No! Do you ever just look at something old and think to yourself, wow, I really should base my entire aesthetic around this one vintage retro thing? There's just something special about the things we grew up with that stick with us throughout the rest of our life. Like a well-worn VHS tape that you just watched into the ground over and over again. Or a well-loved copy of Pokemon Yellow. Old is hip, old is hot, I want some old. But you know what I love even more than all of that? Games that have a retro vibe. Now, I'm not talking about games like Golf Story or Shovel Knight that are intended to invoke the nostalgia of retro games. No, I'm talking about the ones that look and feel retro without even trying. Because they kind of are. Take one of my favorite games of all time, RuneScape. No, not that RuneScape. Not even close. I'm talking about the blueprint, the impetus, the absolutely unforgettable, one and only Old School RuneScape. I'm gonna go ahead and assume that if you're watching this video right now, you already have a general idea of what RuneScape is. Unless you're my dad, and you call it RuneScape. But in case you've lived under a rock for the last 20 years, RuneScape is a massively multiplayer online RPG that's been around for a really long time. So long, in fact, that in 2017, Guinness World Records listed it as the world's largest and most updated free-to-play MMO, which is not surprising in the slightest. RuneScape's first form, commonly referred to as Classic, was released in January 2001. Being the first version of the game, a lot of the classic skills and concepts that we know today were introduced. I never got to experience Classic. I was only 10 at the time, and all I was doing was playing CDs on the Dell Dimensions Pentium 3. Ask me how many times I've played through the same 4 levels of Disney's Toy Story 2 or Eyewitness Virtual Reality Dinosaur Hunter, though. Those were my jam. Classic would then be followed up in 2004 by RuneScape 2. And while the servers were discontinued that same year, Jagex had, on occasion, brought an older version of Classic back online for major events, like RuneScape's 15th anniversary, letting new players and veterans alike experience the majesty and the campiness of Classic. Unfortunately, it looks like any future chances to experience Classic have been lost faster than a dragon scimitar in the wilderness. Back in 2018, Jagex announced that they would be vaulting RuneScape for good due to numerous unfixable issues and errors. RuneScape 2 wasn't just the newest iteration of the game. It was a massive overhauling of the combat, quests, visuals, music, everything. This is also the version that I grew up on. I remember it like it was yesterday, but in reality it was the summer of 2004. I was going into 7th grade and one of my friends came over for my birthday. They had started talking about this fancy new game that let them live the life of an adventuring hero, trading and questing with other players from all over the world. I don't talk about this aspect of my personality a lot, but I am a sucker for joining MMOs because my friends are playing them. That's how I lost almost a decade of my life to World of Warcraft and almost 7 years to Final Fantasy XIV. But the first time I logged into RuneScape, I could tell there was something special about this game. So special, in fact, that I would dedicate 2 to 3 hours every day after school hogging up the dial-up connection and grinding away against the Lumbridge goblins. Unfortunately, the name of my first account has been lost to the ravages of time. The first account I do remember having, though, was named Misawa89 after my favorite character from Yu-Gi-Oh! GX. Unfortunately, that account has been lost to time because someone thought they were giving a Jagex mod their password to be made a mod, and no matter how many times I'd start over, though, I would always spend the longest time as a free-to-play player, chopping down trees, smelting iron ore, and fishing up lobster. Occasionally, I'd go on a quest for some bonus rewards, but most of the time, it was all skilling and chilling. Unfortunately, the good times couldn't last forever. In 2006, I started high school and really started piling on the after-school activities, like marching band, show choir, theater, soccer. I ended up missing out on the much-anticipated high-detail mode, too, which looked really nice, but doesn't appeal to my tastes. I much prefer the look of those sharp-edged, low-polygon models. Like Classic before it, RuneScape 2 would eventually be discontinued, and in 2012 it paved the way for... I don't like it. Turns out, I wasn't alone. The backlash was so intense that just months after Modern's release, Jagex put up an old backup of RuneScape 2's source code online for players to relive their glory days. This version of the game, lovingly referred to as Old School RuneScape, was originally members only, but it would later change to a free-to-play model with a members option in 2015. To this day, Old School RuneScape is still receiving major content updates. There was the addition of forestry, a little bit of a minigame to the woodcutting skill that adds a little bit more to it than just chopping down down trees, multiple new quests constantly being added, new raids, the Song of the Elves Master Quest. There's just so much constantly being added. A recent poll seemed to lean towards a new sailing skill being added, which would be the first new skill added to Old School RuneScape, like on a boat. The absolute best part of Old School RuneScape, though, has to be the addition of the mobile version of the game. This is like how I exclusively play the game now. Now you can play RuneScape on your iOS or Android device, free, using the app, and take it with you wherever you go. As excited as I am to be talking about this game, though, I'm just as intimidated. RuneScape has a lot of content to explore, and even though I've been playing on and off for years, I've still only seen a small fraction of it. If you take a look at my skill levels, you can learn a lot about my playstyle. Sure, I have some pretty decent combat skills, and a few of my gathering skills are above the average, but then there's some that, well, let's just say I hyperfixated on. Fishing has always been one of my favorite skills. I love to waste the day away fishing lobsters on Karamja Island, spearfishing outside of Catherby, and just hanging out on the fishing trawler. Cooking actually pairs really well with fishing as well, since you can just cook your catch up on the spot. And I do, a lot. My good friend Ben and I actually started a skill challenge on stream, and that's what kind of got us back into Old School RuneScape recently, where we would each pick a set of skills to split between us and only be able to level those up during the week. And it was a really unique and interesting way to play the game that I haven't seen too many other people utilize. So while you're leveling up and working on your skills, or maybe out hunting monsters, you might find yourself coming across a rolled up bit of parchment called a clue scroll. Clue scrolls alone make membership worth it for me. I love them that much. They're exactly what they sound like, a scroll with a clue. They can come from geodes, bottles, birds' nests, and even the corpses of your enemies. As you follow the clues, you'll find more clues, leading to more clues, leading to more clues, and eventually a casket, dropping a reward that most of the time is not worth it. Now let's talk about quests, because I really love the quests in this game. Out of all the MMOs I've ever played, RuneScape has my favorites. Probably because I can remember the objectives of them after almost 2 decades. A few of my favorites are Vampire Slayer, where you would go and kill a vampire that's resting in the haunted mansion, Ernest the Chicken, which took place entirely in that same mansion, and of course we can't forget about Demon Slayer. Demon Slayer was the first major combat quest I ever finished without dying, and I was so excited that I remember running into the living room to tell my parents. Sadly, they were not as enthused as I was. In other MMOs, it can feel like the quests are just an excuse to get you to walk all over the world and talk to a random NPC. But Old School RuneScape asks you to actively get involved in these people's lives and make a change in the world around you. If you don't pay attention, it can be super easy to get lost wandering around and doing all these quests. Thankfully, there's over 100 RuneScape wikis out there, so one of them's bound to have the answers you're looking for. I always keep one tab loaded up with the wiki when I'm playing, just to make things a little easier. One little thing I'd like to mention real quick is the helmet icon right next to my character's name. When we started our skill challenge, we decided to add an additional level of difficulty by becoming Iron Man. Iron Man mode is a setting that you can choose when setting up your character on Tutorial Island that restricts your access to certain features, like trading with other players and buying and selling items on the Grand Exchange. Basically, it boils down to do it yourself. Honestly, Iron Man has been a really fun way to play the game. It forced me to experience everything RuneScape has to offer in a completely different way. I will admit though, one of the big things about RuneScape that I love and missed while playing Iron Man was the interactions with other players and some of the more commerce-centric things about the game, like the Grand Exchange. One of the best parts about leveling up a skill is being able to make something that others can find value in and selling it to make money. One final thing I want to talk about is RuneScape's aesthetic. One of the things that keeps me coming back is these beautiful low polygon models. Yeah, okay, I know that all sounds strange, but there's just something about the look of RuneScape that hits all the right notes for me. Speaking of all the right notes, the soundtrack for RuneScape? Phenomenal, 10 out of 10. In fact, the background music for this video, it's all RuneScape tracks. I've been trying to track down the vinyl albums, but they are out of production now and thus super expensive. I've been playing the game on and off for a long time, but no matter what happens, every time I pick it up, I kind of end up defaulting to the same method of play. Heck, with the skills and knowledge I've picked up in our most recent playthrough, I'm still scared as shit to go do the Dragon Slayer quest. Someone even called me out during a game of pest control, and I just was like, how did he know? Yeah, so that's my kind of confession. After all this time, almost just 20 years of playing on and off, I've never finished Dragon Slayer. But you know what? We are gonna finish that right now.
Blood orange. You killed a dragon! Congratulations!
I did it, Mom! So the year is 2023. We're right on the cusp of RuneScape adding in its first new skill since launch, and the question is, should you play Old School RuneScape? I think you already know what I'm going to say. I don't think it's going to be everyone's cup of tea, but Old School RuneScape does bring a lot to the table when it comes to a cozy MMO, especially one that you can take with you on the go. And hey, if you're like me and used to play RuneScape all the time back in the day and this video has got you feeling all nostalgic, there is no better time to dive back in. If you're concerned about the price, try not to sweat it too much. There's a ton of content that's still free to play. I went the first 3 years of my life playing free to play before I ever considered becoming a member. And as of recently, players can purchase membership time in the form of Old School bonds on the Grand Exchange using their hard-earned in-game currency. You don't have to spend real-life money on your membership at all. I've really been enjoying the mobile version of the game. It feels nice to be able to boot up whenever I want, do some simple skilling, and then close the app for a few hours. If you're interested in seeing more RuneScape content from me, I highly recommend you checking it out on Twitch or my Stream Archive channel. We've been playing it every Tuesday, and it's really been a lot of fun to revisit some of these older haunts and some of these newer pieces of content as well. And if you have any memories of Old School RuneScape you'd like to share, please share them in the comments below. I'd love to join the discussion with you. Thank you so much for watching this video. I hope you've enjoyed it, and I will be back with something new very soon.